All right, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Ray Hall Talking College Ball. It's going to be the Week 9 recap, kind of what took place this week. Overall, unexciting week. When you put in comparison to the following or the previous week, I think the only top 25 upsets there really was Illinois and Memphis. Illinois losing to Washington and USF losing to Memphis. There might be one or two more that I'm missing right now. Those are really the big ones I took away from the weekend. But we're going to cover all the big games, cover those two games, and kind of go over like what is the tipping point in college football right now. So we'll start with that. College Football Nerds kind of posted this earlier this week on X. So if you haven't seen their thought process, because they're the ones kind of developed and put it out there, you should go take a look at it. But 3, 4, maybe even 5 years ago, they made the change to the clock procedures in college football. It used to be that after every first down, anytime a player stepped out of bounds or anything like an incomplete pass, obviously the clock would stop. They changed that now, so the only thing that stops the clock outside of the, I think it's 2 minutes end of each half, is incomplete pass. So first downs, when they're moving the chains and resetting the chains, they no longer stop unless it's inside 2 minutes. If a player goes out of bounds, it's no longer stop unless it's inside 2 minutes. So these games are much, much shorter. What does that mean? In simple terms, it means less possessions. So that's why you see these, it's a combination of things, but that it definitely a contributing factor to the parity we see in college football nowadays, because there's less possessions. I replied to this tweet using a very simple example where if you have an offense that scores on 50% of their drives, right, and they get 10 drives per game, and just for this, we'll use touchdowns for scores. So that means they're scoring 35 points a game. All right, cool. That's a pretty solid offense in today's day and age. But if they had 16 drives per game, that would have meant they're scoring 56 points previously before the clock changes. So that right there, that's a 21-point swing. But then if you take it to a team that scores 40% of the time, and they're playing a team that scores 50% of the time, that game becomes like 35 to like 28, 35 to 30, comparatively to it would have been like 35 to or 56 to 42. So that's why these margins are so much closer, because you're not getting any opportunities to kind of run up the score per se for these effective offenses. And that's why you look at teams like Ohio State and Alabama, and I know Alabama kind of had a stinker this weekend, but you look at their second half offenses, they're very methodical. They're trying to control the time of possession to kind of eliminate the fluctuation that offenses have. If they can keep their defense, limit the possessions, then they can limit the scoring, obviously, but also limits your chances. Like, it's a very analytical way of looking at it, where if I know this team's going to score half the percent of the time and their drives, if I give them less drives, they're going to score less points. Now, that focuses your offense to be more effective and take advantage of your drives, but you see with these potent offenses, kind of like Alabama and Ohio State, that can score at will for at least put on these long drives and still get points. It works out really well in their favor. It'll be interesting to see when teams and those like-minded match up. Hopefully, like, I think Ohio State and Alabama national championship would be in the same game, because they're very similarly built teams. Their talent profile is very similar. Their coaching level is very high. So I think it would be a good matchup. But it will be interesting to see how that plays out, which mindset kind of takes over. Is it still trying to limit the possessions, or they're like, you know what, let's just go to the mats and start throwing haymakers at each other? I kind of think it'll be the first option, but moving forward, it'll be interesting to see which one it'll be. And then also the combination of the shortened games and the importance of being effective with your possessions kind of is parlayed with the NIL transfer portal. So talent profile on these teams are a lot similar. And then also the leagues are bigger, so there's more good, solid teams in these leagues. So that's why week to week you're going to see these close matchups. Now, for teams like Indiana and Ohio State, it doesn't seem to matter. And I think that's kind of a testament to the SEC and the depth of it. But I also think it's a testament to Ohio State, Indiana, out there, Oregon in there too, where they're just very, very solid teams. They're probably three of the best 5 teams in college football. So when people talk about, the SEC bias, I will be the first one to say, like, the SEC top to bottom is the best league. But I think 3 of the top 5, top 4, maybe even 3 of the best teams, the 3 best teams in college football are from the Big Ten. Now that plays in their favor and plays against them. Obviously, if you're in the SEC and you're playing battles every week, you're going to get worn down over the course of the season. But then you come out on the other side and you're battle tested. You kind of have more room for error, I guess, to say. Where a 3-loss team in the SEC has a much better chance of getting into the playoffs than a 3-loss team in the Big Ten, especially if their out-of-conference schedule isn't up to snuff. So, but moving forward, we're just going to talk about the games the rest of the week. I wanted to talk about that because I've seen a lot of people, one, talk about the parity, so I wanted to touch like my thought process on it. And then 2, the SEC versus Big Ten, who's the top dog conference, is one that will never be solved. Even if you have the right answer, people are still going to argue it, but I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. First game we're going to go over that happened this week was A&M versus LSU. A&M, they weathered the storm, took the punches in the first half. They were down, 18-14 going into halftime. Marcel Reed looked very human, looked like the Marcel Reed of last year. That kind of raised some questions for Aggies fans with those turnovers he had. They weren't terrible plays. One was a tip. The other one, he kind of just had a predetermined read, and the safety made a good play on it. That one hurt in the red zone. Definitely changed the forecast of the first half. I'm not sure if it changed the forecast of the game because they still won by, 25? I think the final score is 45-25 or 42-25. They ran away with it. And that's kind of the team that A&M is. It's like Mike Elko's personality is, we're going to suffocate you, and basically we're going to take you to the deep end of the water, hold you there, let you drown. We'll hold our breaths, and then once you're out, we'll come back to surface, and that's it. Like, you're coming down with us, but we're going to outlast you. And you kind of saw it on full display tonight. Now, A&M's defense definitely still has some questions. They stepped up in the second half. I think LSU's offense is at a point where you can't really learn a lot from A&M's defense, even in the second half or the first half. There's definitely talent out there, but the overall process and production of that offense for LSU isn't where it's supposed to be. So I think A&M's defense, I don't think it's solved. I don't think they figured it out. But they definitely stepped up in that second half. I think it helps when your offense is just putting up points. Marcel Reed came out in the second half, stopped making those mistakes, started getting the ball to his playmakers, made some plays personally himself. I'm curious to see where he falls in the Heisman ranking after, I don't want to say like sub performances from Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza, but he definitely had the biggest game of the week of that bunch and performed pretty well. And Mendoza didn't get the chance to actually put up big numbers because that was just, like I predicted it would be over by halftime, and it was. And then Ty Simpson, if you look at his stat lines, a fairly good stat line, but if you watch the game, he left a lot out there. So I'm curious to see where Marcel Reed now falls in the Heisman contention. And I saw someone pose this question this morning. What has Ohio State and Indiana done to warrant them being ranked ahead of Texas A&M? I think both of them have those wins. Obviously, Indiana's win over Oregon at Oregon, that was a big win. And then Ohio State opening against Texas and winning that game, that's a huge win. But if you look at kind of since then, Texas A&M has had some very, very tough wins in tough environments. But they've also had a lot closer games. That's why I think they're at 3 right now. Like the Arkansas game, people kind of look at that and said, yep, they're good. They should be top 3, but they're going to be 3. So that's kind of where they're at with them. Going to the LSU side, Death Valley at night is real. That team, unfortunately, is not. That first half, you kind of saw all the energy and the toxic environment that everyone was talking about, and it played a factor. But LSU was never really able to fully capitalize on it to keep them in the game. Their offense looked improved in the first half. They were able to run the ball fairly well, which was surprising to see. And that's kind of more so where I'm like, yeah, I don't think A&M's defense is solved yet because LSU was able to be pretty productive on the ground, and they haven't been able to do that all year. I did like that LSU's offense was feeding Trades Green, I believe, 14, the tight end. He's a freak out there. I mean, he's got the size, the speed. He's going to be a really good player, and he just creates mismatches. So they think their offense needs to get a little bit more involvement from him. It's hard to tell, though, with the offensive line, what they can really do and what they can actually scheme up. Nuss looked decent. You can tell that he was still injured, probably got re-injured during the game, at least his ribs again, or his oblique. A really disappointing season for LSU, kind of expectations of competing for a national championship, and now they have 3 losses. So they have to be perfect to even want a chance at making the playoffs. Their schedule is still pretty brutal because they have to go to Alabama, where they haven't had the best of luck. What I will say is every year that LSU has won the national championship, they've beaten Alabama at Alabama. So that could be a good omen if they're able to get that done. But then they still have to play Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's kind of in the same spot as them of needing to win out to have a chance. So it should offer some good games. If you paid attention towards the end, you were hearing the fire Brian Kelly chants. I just don't think they can fire him traditionally. That is a lot of money. It's over $50 million. I talked previously about how they don't have the cash flow to kind of fire him and then fire his assistants and then go get a big name like they want to get. So that's why I throw out that Penn State idea of kind of a backdoor deal where the whole buyout isn't due because he goes to a different school, but I don't think you can traditionally fire him. But yeah, I mean, hats off to A&M. They are 8-0. I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to some Aggies fans and see how they were feeling at halftime. If some of those old woes came back where they're like, oh, nope, this is what happens. This is the life of the Aggie fan. We have it all set up, and it's starting to crash down just like it always does. But good for them being able to weather the storm and come out there with a really impressive win. Next thing we're talking about, Ole Miss at Oklahoma. Ole Miss put 34 against a really, really good defense. And they kind of did it with ease in a way. I mean, there was definitely some parts where they were facing some pushback, but when they needed it and when they wanted it, they were able to get it. So that was really impressive. Another strong start by Ole Miss and Coach Lane Kiffin's team, but being able to finish is kind of taking that next step in the evolution as Lane Kiffin as a head coach. His teams have always been off to these fast starts, but being able to finish the game, play good situational football, win the critical downs through a full 4 quarters, you're starting to see that from Ole Miss. You didn't see it last week, saw it this week, but it's an improvement. That's something you hang your hat on. So everyone that was saying that Ole Miss is going to lose because Lane Kiffin's thinking about Florida, I think he was pretty focused. He was where his feet were, as coaches like to say. He did a pretty good job of addressing those rumors and getting his team ready to play. I think with this one now, though, what you can do with Ole Miss is you can take the Sharpie out and they can join Ohio State, Indiana in the college football playoff and right then Sharpie. I don't see a way of them, unless there's some catastrophic blow up that we're not expecting. I don't see them not making the playoffs at this point. The real question is can they make it to Atlanta and play for the SEC championship, which will probably get them into a top 4 position to get a first round bye. But I think they're in a really good position to at least host a home game for the playoffs, which is huge for the program of Ole Miss. It's kind of been pushed to the side or forgotten, but Ole Miss has not been at this level, and Lane Kiffin has gotten to this level, and they're consistently there. So that's another reason why I think he's going to stay there. Like, there's nothing that he doesn't have at Ole Miss that he can get at Florida. If you want to talk about recruit, that's fine, but the new age, it's kind of different. Recruits aren't staying local, or aren't staying true to their home state alliances as much as they were before. So I think he's pretty comfortable and content where he's at. Now, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, we're talking about LSU, but Oklahoma needs to be perfect the rest of the season. It's going to be hard for them. They have Alabama, they have LSU, they had Texas A&M. It's a very tough schedule the rest of the way. I think they can get in at 9-3, but being 9-3 means that they would have to beat two of Alabama, LSU, and which is a tough ask, especially with Alabama being on the road. So we'll see if they can do it. If they do that, I think they deserve a spot at 9-3. And there'll probably be some conversations and some discussion about that. It'd be interesting to see if Oklahoma's at 9-3 with those big wins and Notre Dame's at 10-2. I think Notre Dame will get in just because of the brand name and the way they finish the season with 10 straight wins. But if that becomes the discussion, I'll be really intrigued to see which one wins out. Material in that offense is better than what was last year. That's kind of how you've seen an improvement for the program. But they're still very limited. They actually got some run help today. But Mateer wasn't the out-of-this-world player that we expected him to be when he transferred over, and that's kind of what happened to him. They didn't win the critical downs, and I'll stop right there and mention, I'm going to mention critical downs a lot. It's kind of a buzzword in college football right now. If you follow Brooks Austin, the Film Guy Network, he does a great job breaking down film, but one thing he talks about a lot, and I watch a lot of his content, so I kind of pick up some of his words, is the critical downs. I think Coach DeBoer said today after the USC or South Carolina win, they won the critical downs, and that's what happened, and that's how they came away with the victory. But that's really what college football is going to be like, especially going back to what we first talked about, how the game's shortened and these possessions matter so much more. It's how effective and how efficient you can be on critical downs is really going to determine if you can win football games. That's really all I have left for this game. Lane Kiffin had some nice, I don't even want to call them shots, but just like little jabs, I guess, after the game. I think it's going to be hard to not picture him going to Florida because of the similarities he has with Coach Steve Spurrier, old head ball coach there. And he's kind of the new age version of him. So it's always interesting to see him pull out what he's going to say before the game or after the game. But yeah, I think Coach Kiffin's very content where he's at right now. Now, the next thing we're talking about is Mizzou at Vandy. 17-10. Vandy, I don't want to say it dominated the game. It was a pretty even matchup the entire way. Even when Pabula got injured, it still wasn't like, okay, the flood dam broke and Vandy's taking over now. They're pretty matched teams. And there wasn't like a one quarterback that separated themselves, and that's kind of why you saw it be a close game, 3-3 at half. I think 10-10 going into the fourth quarter, or at least early in the fourth quarter, I got 10-10. Then Vandy finally pulled away on that. I think it was a fumble turnover that got them the ball in the possession. I don't think Pabula staying in the game would have changed the outcome. It's a terrible break for him, and I don't mean to use that as a play on words, but like that was a nasty, nasty injury he suffered, so hopefully he's good. Prayers up for him. But I'm going to go to Vanderbilt. One thing I want to get off the chest, and I don't want to start off by bashing the winning team here, but I am going to. It's not really the team in general. It's kind of the individual player. Pavia going into the post-game press conference talking about, I should be the Heisman. Dude, you threw like, what, $150 today? No touchdowns. You had the game-winning touchdown on the ground. That was awesome. Good for you. But like, if you look at some of the performances the other quarterbacks or other players are putting out there, it doesn't really compare to what Pavia is doing in the sense of those performances are much higher than what Pavia is able to accomplish. I think it's a great story, and he should definitely win some postseason or some end-of-season awards. But the Heisman, I don't think he should be. I don't think he should be up in New York for the ceremony. At least that's my opinion on it. Vanderbilt's defense isn't elite. They're just very situationally sound. They don't give you a lot of freebies. So when you need to take advantage of what you can against them. But they deserve credit for the performance they put up today. There's a few big runs that Mizzou broke, but not any of like the actual knockout punches. They were able to limit those, keep the game closed. When you're playing a team like Vandy, you got to put them away when you can. There was a couple red zone goal-to-go situations that Mizzou had, and they didn't take full advantage of them. Obviously, they missed a field goal too. That doesn't change the outcome of the game, just the final score, but that does change the actual flow of the game, so it could have led to something different. But I think there was at least one possession where they had to settle for a field goal on the 2-yard line. Mizzou did, and you can't do that against a team like Vandy because they're going to make you pay for it. You have to kind of step on the neck, kill them when you have the chance, because if you keep giving them chances, Pavia is a good enough gamer. Well, he's going to put his team in a situation to win. Mizzou just made too many crucial mistakes. They're still literally inches away from forcing at least overtime, or maybe even going for 2 and winning that in the final seconds. I'm curious to see what Drinkwitz would have done there in that situation. Honestly, I think he probably would have gone for 2 if he scored there. He's out with his backup quarterback. He just needs one play to walk away with a win instead of prolonging the game. And Vanderbilt's offense is very, very, very efficient in red zone. So I don't think it would bode well for them if they try to take it to overtime. But we'll never know exactly what he would have done. So I think a big thing for Mizzou to kind of take him to that next step, that next level in college football, it is, I don't want to say they need to get away from the transfer quarterback, because if there's a great prospect out there they can have and get, then they should get them. But they kind of need to develop their own homegrown talent in a sense. And I'm not saying homegrown to Missouri, but more so homegrown to their program. They need to land one of these top 10 quarterbacks, have them develop, and then have them be a 2-3 year starter for them so they can kind of build off of that. It's very hard for any team to kind of plug and place a quarterback into a system and then to win a national championship. But I think it's especially hard for a program like Mizzou, who's not the top of the tier, but just that level below. Moving forward, we're going to go to BYU at Iowa State. Credit to BYU, I didn't think we'd be able to come from behind like this. Iowa State had a quick jump out. I think it was 17-0 lead or 17-3. I don't know. They were up by at least 2 scores at one point. And I thought Iowa State was going to be able to kind of just sit on that. And BYU said, nope, we're going to be able to come from behind. And not only able to come from behind, we won by 2 touchdowns or 2 scores. I think it was finals 40-24. The way they were able to play out there, very impressive. I didn't think they had that in their repertoire. So good for them. Bachmeier should win Newcomer of the Year in the Big 12 or Freshman of the Year. He should probably be on the Freshman All-American team for the quarterback spot with the performances he's done and the accolades he has. But their game plan for BYU on offense is very simple. It's run the ball, make you commit more guys to the box, and then take chances deep down the field with these one-on-one matchups. And we like the Big 12. That's kind of all you need because these back ends are not going to have these star players, especially with Iowa State, who's pretty banged up back there. I'm not sure how well it's going to transfer when they play Big 10 SEC opponents who have these high-level players in the back end, if they'll still be able to kind of hit you and hurt you that way. But in the Big 12, in their current lineup, it's working well for them. They also just saved the Big 12's chances at getting 2 teams to the playoff. I see the situation playing out where they could be undefeated. I think they play Texas Tech at Texas Tech, so they could be a 1-loss in Big 12 play, playing against Texas Tech and another 1-loss team in Big 12 play, and either have a chance to go to the playoffs with a win, or if they play them both those games close, then an argument for 2 Big 12 teams to make the playoff. But it'll be interesting to see. Big 12 has had a sneaky good year in comparison to what they've done in the years past. I'm just not sure if they have the respect level enough to get 2 teams in. But they definitely saved their chances or made their chances better of that today with BYU beating Iowa State. Unfortunately, I don't want to talk about – I'm going to do it a couple of times. I don't want to talk about the coach's job, especially after a loss. But I think Matt Campbell has hit his ceiling at Iowa State. And I don't think this year is his actual ceiling. I think last year was. But I think 10-2, maybe even 11-1, but not being able to kind of get over the hump of the Big 12 championship game or maintain this high level of play, that's kind of his ceiling. So I'm curious to see if he feels that way. You'll probably find out by if he takes one of these job openings that's opening up. But it's unfortunate because he's done it the right way. He spent a lot of time with that program building it up to get where it's at. And I think he's just reached its peak level of what he can accomplish there. And I mentioned it, Iowa State's roster is depleted with injuries, but it's no excuse really for how they kind of separate away that lead and let BYU get back in the game. And then once BYU is back in the game, completely lose control of it and then have BYU win by, I can't remember the final off the top of my head, but it wasn't close at the end. That was kind of an inspiring effort in the second half of Iowa State. And I think we might have given them a little too much credit, especially now knowing what we know about Kansas State in that opening win in Farmageddon in Dublin. But I still think Matt Campbell does a great job. A great football coach, runs a solid program. I just think they've kind of reached their ceiling at Iowa State. So, all right, now moving down to Starkville, Texas at Mississippi State. Texas still alive for the postseason. Still alive even for the SEC championship appearance. But this was one of the easier games they had left. So for it to take an overtime effort on a 17-point comeback in the fourth quarter, you can either look at one of two ways of, wow, it took you guys that type of effort to make sure your chance to stay alive. I don't believe in you. Or this team is resilient. They have fight. When they need to put it on, they can put it on. But I'm not feeling it. It's more so the first option than the second option for me when I look at Texas. Best situation for them, they can make the A&M game at the end of the year a chance for the playoffs and also the SEC championship game. I think they're going to drop one along the way. They have Vanderbilt up next. Arch's health is in question, which could be good for the program. Give Arch a chance to step back without actually benching him, hurt his confidence. But they still have to beat Vanderbilt to keep this season alive. So that's the other side of the coin there. But if they can make it to the A&M game with 2 or 3 losses, if they have 3 losses, if they're 8-3 going to A&M game and they knock out A&M, I don't want to say they're going to be in, but Texas is a big enough brand where I can see them being in. You can look at their losses, like, oh, well, they lost to Ohio State and one team in the country, and then they lost to Georgia at Georgia, or lost to Vandy. You can kind of play that picture, but I think they're going to need to be perfect going up into that game, and to have that game be the decider for their postseason chances. Mississippi State, I feel for this program and their fans. One week, one of these games is going to break their way. That fourth quarter proves that they're still not a really good team, though, or just a good team. They kind of had that win against Arizona State earlier in the year, which lifted expectations for them. This is a team, I'm not sure if people remember, their preseason win total was 3.5. So they beat that in September, which was awesome. But this is they're still kind of on par for the course of what was expected from them, at least by the odds makers in Vegas. So people are saying fire Levy. I don't think you can fire him. There's been drastic improvements from last year to this year. So you can look at that and be like, yeah, he's doing a good job. He just is still building his roster, still building his program. Let's give him a little bit more time. But that fourth quarter, if he was in year 3, that's a fireable offense, the way that fourth quarter went. But they need a signature win this year. If they could somehow do it against Ole Miss and keep them out of the playoffs, Mississippi State fans would be so happy about that. So maybe that's what they're looking for. But moving forward, really the big question out of this game is Texas and Arch, his health. I'm not sure exactly what it was. It was either a shoulder or a head thing. It kind of looked like shoulder, but then also he looked dazed when he came up from the actual hit. So maybe it was a head thing. Hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he's good to go. I know it's been a disappointing year for him. But the last thing you want is some type of injury that derails his career completely. So now moving to the Big Ten, Illinois at Washington. Washington must have heard, I'm assuming this is what happened, a huge following in the Pacific Northwest. They probably heard about what I was saying, how Illinois is the primo team of that second tier in the Big Ten, and Washington can't start games fast, and they didn't get off the bus with the Michigan game. And they took some offense to that and came out and just absolutely dominated Illinois in this game. DeMond Williams is so good. Last week, I guess, is really an outlier. Or maybe it was just a step up in class, kind of like how when they played Ohio State, it didn't really transfer as well. So he's still a young player developing, but he's so good. I was doing a little scenario in my head about if Jedd Fisch were to go to Penn State and bring DeMond Williams with him. And I was looking at that Penn State schedule for next year. You could, if that was the case, I think you can mark Penn State as a playoff team before the season even starts, just based off of if Jeff Fish can bring some of his players, specifically Demond Williams, to Happy Valley with him, that schedule is a very, very easy schedule. So that'd be kind of one of those situations that Indiana had last year, where the schedule was very easy. And although it's a new coach, but they bring in a lot of players, they're able to kind of run the table and get a playoff berth. And Indiana fans don't jump at me. It's not discrediting what Indiana did. I just earlier said they're top 3 team, probably one of either the number 1 or number 2 best team in college football right now. I'm not discrediting what they did. I'm just using that as a scenario. But it was nice to see that kind of 3-headed monster they have with Coleman, Joan Williams, and Boston in that game. Jonah Coleman, Boston, and Williams in that game. They had a great game. That's kind of what you expected when you were looking at this roster, this team before the season, that those 3 were going to be able to cause a lot of nightmare problems for defenses with the skill they had and the mismatches they were able to create. Illinois, I think they're an 8-4 team, and it's kind of just what they're going to be. 7-5 to 9-3, and then Bielema, he raised the floor on that program, but it's going to be very hard to break through that next barrier to the top level Big Ten programs. They're a good football team. If you're not on your game, they can beat you any week. Just ask Lincoln Riley about that. But I still think they're just a step below in that second tier. But I guess not the best team that second tier, because Washington just won that matchup. So I'm not sure if they'll be ranked the rest of the year in regards to Illinois, which kind of makes sense. I have them around like a 25 to 35 ranked team, so they can teeter in. It wouldn't surprise me if they rack off 3 wins in a row and they get ranked again. But if they finish unranked, I also wouldn't be surprised. I don't see them breaking into the top 20. But obviously, when it comes to rankings, it's about what the other teams around you do as well. So we'll have to see. But all right, now moving back to the SEC. A lot of people have already created the dialect for this game, or the dialogue for this game. If Alabama lost, it would have been like, it's tough to play in the SEC on the road. Like, they had South Carolina, they were a top 15 preseason team. This is a good team, a lot of skill on it. And then since Bama won, now the dialogue is, a hard-fought, gritty win against a really impressive opponent on the road. You don't take wins for granted. And that's just people playing into that the SEC has this unfavorable bias. But there's some bias to it. I think there's some stats that back that up. But in this game, I think the Bama offense looked closer to FSU in regards to like the FSU game than they have all year. And I think it really comes down to the pressure on Ty Simpson. He wasn't sacked a crazy amount. He was pressured heavily, and they were able to get home just 4. That he did have another sack fumble. I think it's 3 games in a row where he's fumbled the ball. So that's something to look out as, where he's very protected when he actually places the ball throwing it, but in the pocket, he is gettable. But Bama's defense stepped up. It's not like South Carolina has this high-powered offense, but they can get you. They have skill players out there. Lenore Sellers, he looked awesome today with the way he's able to break sacks, extend plays, use his feet. But Bama's defense really stepped up, and that was kind of what we missed last year, was that complementary football where Bama was sputtering on offense, and their defense also couldn't ring the bell and make the call and basically play up to kind of help their team. So that was nice to see if you're an Alabama fan. Also, you don't really want to see that happen, especially against a 3-4 team like South Carolina. But Bama just went 5-0 against a part of their schedule where very few teams would go 5-0. So hats off to them. They made it to the bye week. It looked like they were trying to make it to the bye week going into that entire game. They were, I don't want to say rolling out the jerseys and hoping to win, but kind of seemed like that. The big thing I learned about Alabama's offense in this game is they don't have the traditional run game, which makes their margin for error a lot smaller. You saw it also in the Cal-Virginia Tech game. I think Virginia Tech had like 400 yards on the ground compared to Cal, who had 50. But if you have a lead, or if you're the better team but you can't run the ball, it creates a lot more. It shrinks your margin for error, at least on your side, and gives the otherwise under unmatched team or underranked team a better chance of winning the game. South Carolina did a lot of good in this game, but they really just, when they had the chances and created the critical moments that I previously mentioned, they just didn't take advantage of them, didn't execute on them, and Alabama kind of did. Norris Sellers and that defensive line, or that pass rush in general, it can compete with pretty much any program in college football. I think you kind of saw it today, but their defensive secondary, their weapons on offense, their offensive line, it is subpar. So it kind of brings this team to a 500 middle of the pack team. But you can tell there's some regrets in Columbia about the Shane Beamer extension, where they kind of extended him without needing to. I don't really think he was looking to get poached from any jobs, but he had that really successful year, so they looked to give him that extension to kind of build on that and not make it a talking point to focus on football. But I definitely think there's some regrets there, at least from the fan point of view. But each week we feel closer that Beamer's going to go to Virginia Tech. And I think he'll have a little bit more grace there than he does at South Carolina. I'm hearing the claims of a Nepo baby in regards to his coaching, both for him and Mike Shula. I think it's funny. These guys, obviously, yes, they got connections based off their name and who their dad and who their fathers were, but also it's not like they're getting propped up to this level just because of that, because these guys understand the game of football and they're good coaches. Just last year, everyone was loving Shane Beamer. And going into season, they thought Mike Shula was going to do a great job. It's funny how a couple of bad breaks can change your complete overlook on a coach in his career. But that's game of college football. That's why we love it. It's because it's so reactionary, and the fans are so rabid that you get these crazy reactions from them. So, all right, moving to the Big 12, second Big 12 game of the day we're going to cover. I kind of read this one. It was one of my few winners I had of the week. We'll go over my whole betting card on the Tuesday episode and kind of break it down to what I saw and what I didn't see and why I finished the way I did. But Houston at ASU, Sam Levitt still kind of banged up. He was in and out of the game. And Willie Fritz, he's just a really, really good head ball coach. So he's a solid coach. Cougars have a good program. Their defense is very stingy. Their offense plays that complementary football where they can do just enough to make sure that the defense isn't being put into these bad situations. And I just can't say enough. Like, Willie Fritz is a good head football coach. There's a reason why Tulane was so successful when he was there, and the way that he set up the foundation there. John Summerall probably owes some credit to him, not taking away any credit from John Summerall. But Willie Fritz, he can build a program. Unfortunately for Houston, they don't really control their destiny. I need some teams to lose out. I think if Texas Tech beats BYU, I'm not sure. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I'm not sure if BYU and Houston play. If they do play in the regular season, that'd be a really good matchup. I think it's very similar teams, so it would be interesting to watch that. But if they just keep winning games, they're going to have a chance to at least go to the Big 12 championship and maybe get a spot in the playoffs, steal a bid, as people like to say. Going into the season, I kind of expected this regression from Arizona State. Their record last year in one-score games was phenomenal. You can't really rely on being that successful in one-score games year in, year out. So I kind of expected that regression to the mean. Hopefully Levitt is coming back and he's healthy. I'm not sure. I think this year has improved its draft stock in the way that he thinks it has, and there's some other people that have kind of risen their draft stock, so I'm not sure he's going to be a bona fide day one pick. But if they can get him back and get Tyson for another year, like this team can be poised to make another run in the upcoming year. I think they just kind of lost their heart and soul in Camp Scatterbo, and it was going to be hard to replace for them. And also, when it's a lot different from being like the team that's projected to finish last versus the team that's projected to finish first, you're going to get everyone's best shot. So you can kind of line it up to that as well. Going to USF at Memphis. This is one of the most exciting games of the day. USF getting knocked off on the road by Memphis, their American Conference competitor right now. Brandon Lewis was able to play, which I kind of expected moving into the week based off of the line. I think if he wasn't expected to play, this would have been over a touchdown, even though USF was on the road, but it finished around like 4.5, 5.5. I think it might even finish around 6.5, but just under a touchdown. So I kind of expected Brendan Lewis to play. He played great today, made a bunch of big throws, made some plays with his feet. I think Silverfield really made all the right calls in the game. He was down by 14, went for 2 once they scored that first touchdown. Didn't get it, played analytics, got it the second time. Was able to kick the game-winning field goal, and then didn't leave too much time on the clock for USF to kind of go down the field and make that play. That's kind of the problem with USF and Tennessee's offense and extension, where if you're making tackles in the secondary on these quick 5-yard, 8-yard hitches, they have to extend the drive, which leaves them for more room for error for the offense. It's an offense that's built off of forcing the secondary to make one-on-one tackles, and if that's not happening, or if that is happening, then it leaves a lot more chance for them kind of sputter. But if the secondary isn't making these one-on-one tackles, then you can kind of see the fireworks and see them put up 70 points against North Texas. So USF still has a chance, obviously, to make the playoffs. I think their resume, even though they have 2 losses now, with their resume, I think they can hang their hat on that. And if they win the American, they could get an overrun these one-loss other Group of 5 champion. But I think it's kind of set up now where if any team but USF, if USF catches another loss, they won't make the championship, so you don't have to worry about that. But if it's another one of these American teams that doesn't have the resume that do, you can see a team like James Madison come in and steal the G5 bid, or even Boise. Now that if USF is not in the competition, you can kind of see them steal the bid. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm rooting for Memphis now. I hope Memphis makes the playoffs. I have a couple of friends and work colleagues that are Memphis alums or fans, so it'd be great for that program. I think Coach Silverfield is a really good head ball coach, and I think he's very loyal to that program. I know his name gets floated out a lot. I think it would take a really big program and a big offer to get him to leave there. But this just jarred my memory as something I want to talk about in the Alabama USC game, or Alabama South Carolina game. The going for 2. I think going back to that game, Shane Beamer should have gone for 2 when they scored that touchdown to make it a 9-point lead, basically a 2-score lead. Because it does one of 2 things. If they don't get it, then Alabama, they either kick it and they're going to OT. Same situation that they were kind of in or hoping for. If Alabama decides to go for 2 and the lead's only 7, then you put your offense in a situation where it's not this weird, we need to kill clock, but we also need to try to make sure that we get down there, win the game. It kind of eliminates all these other options where you can just, we are down by 1, we need to get down the field, kick a field goal to win this game. But then if you get the 2-point conversion, then it's a 9-point lead. Obviously, 2 possessions. It puts you in a situation where even if Alabama scores, kicks the extra point in that situation, they're down by 2 at that point, they're still need a field goal. If you get a first down, you basically win the game. So I think it just eliminates a lot of other decisions in the game. Like making that decision there kind of puts you on track of now we are doing this, and makes the decision for you the rest of the game. Now, I'm sure if Shane Beamer went for 2, they didn't get it, and Alabama went for 2 to make it 22-21, and they won the game. People being like, why did you go for 2 there? You could have just kicked the field goal, make it an 8-point lead, play for overtime. But they always kind of tell you that if you're at home, you want to play for overtime because you're in the fans. But if your team is playing a class above, you want to win the game in regulation, because the more you extend the game, the better team is going to generally win out. But that's just my thought process on that. I think Shane Beamer should have done what Scott Silverfield did and gone for 2 there and played the analytics card. But yeah, that's kind of my recap for Week 9 in general. Like I said, we'll be back on Tuesday to go over my 14 picks that I went. Not a terrible week. It was a losing week, but it wasn't a terrible losing week. there's definitely some I want back, and then definitely some that I'm going to blame on the teams because I think I read them right and they just didn't execute. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please follow me on X at @RayHall_college football or CFB. Like, subscribe, leave a comment on the video. I'll also do some of the questions that you guys will leave in the comments in the video. Ask me anything about college football. It can be historical, it can be current, it can be about the future and what I expect to happen, or hey, if this happened, what do you think the outcome would be for college football as a whole? But please, whatever you want to ask, do it there. And thank you guys for tuning in.